Hey guys, tonight we're heading to a place that smells like wet moss, wood smoke, and something slightly fishy you can't quite identify, but don't worry. That's part of the charm. We're standing on the squelchy edge of a medieval English riverbank, where the fog rolls in like a heavy quilt and the only thing more reliable than bad weather is the promise of another eel haul. There's no bustling city, no stone castle, just a sleepy village with roofs that sag under the weight of last week's rain, and people who know that, come dawn, they'll be back knee-deep in cold river mud, hoping to outwit one of the slipperiest creatures in all of creation. And you're going with them. You probably won't survive this. By the way, between the biting chill, the calf-deep muck, and the fact that eel catching is way harder than it sounds, there's a high chance you'll just wander off and become local folklore. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step carefully onto the muddy shore, your boots immediately regretting everything. It's just before dawn, and the fog is thick enough to chew. A few low wooden houses hug the riverside, their thatched roofs dripping. Someone stirring porridge inside. You can smell it. Oats, maybe leeks, possibly eel, because here, in this time and place, eel isn't just food, it's the economy. The river isn't wide, but it moves with purpose. Brown, opaque, mysterious. Locals call it the Old Tongue because it speaks in ways only fishermen seem to understand. A wooden weir stretches across it, half dam, half fence, designed not to stop the water, but to trick the eels into revealing themselves. And they do. At night, always at night. Long, snake-like, slippery as secrets. The villagers say you have to sing to them. Not loudly, not opera. Just hum, slowly, like you're trying to soothe something skittish out of hiding. You try it. A low, simple tune. A hum. Your breath barely carries. And for a moment, you imagine a shadow in the current pausing listening. Historians still argue whether the singing was meant to attract the eels or just keep the fishermen sane. After all, crouching for hours in knee-deep cold with nothing but reeds and patience can make even the most stoic peasant crave a tune. You walk along the riverbank, passing woven baskets staked in the shallows, each one a trap disguised as a welcome. A young boy sets bait into one with practiced hands, bits of rotting meat, bread soaked in pig blood. Nothing too fancy. Eels aren't picky, but they are clever. You have to ask nicely, he says, grinning. You hum again. A few notes. He nods approvingly and returns to his work. In the distance, someone else is singing a reedy, repetitive line about silver in the mud and the tail that knows the moon. It echoes gently through the mist. Not quite music, not quite magic. A woman walks past you carrying a bucket of eel skins. She doesn't say hello, but you can see the rhythm of the old song in her steps. You keep walking. The path winds through low brush. Past a stone cross leaning at an odd angle, a handful of names are etched into it. Fishermen lost to river floods, or eel bites, or maybe just stories that grew legs and wandered off. At the far end of the village, the river bends. There's a quiet here you can't explain. It settles on your shoulders like damp linen. A lone trap sits in the bend, half submerged. You crouch beside it, placing a hand on the wet wooden rim. The water moves slowly around it, whispering secrets in a dialect you almost but not quite understand. You hum one last time, and something in the current hums back. You return to the riverside before dawn, this time with purpose. The villagers are already stirring. You can hear the soft thud of boots on wet earth, the creak of wooden yokes, and a sleepy rooster crowing as if it regrets the effort. Somewhere, someone sneezes into a wool sleeve and mutters about the fog. You're about to see how eels are caught, or at least attempted to be caught. Because medieval eel fishing is less precision sport and more optimistic guesswork with a dash of ancient superstition. You step into the water. Immediately, your feet disappear into the mud. Not just soft mud. This is the kind of mud that feels like it knows things. Ancient, cold, unforgiving. You try not to think about what's squirming near your ankles. It's probably just river weed. Probably, a man hands you a leap, which is not as joyful as it sounds. It's a long, cone-shaped basket made of willow. You hold it gingerly, like it might bite. He shows you how to push it underwater, narrow end first, and secure it with a stone. Inside, he places bait, a handful of chicken guts, a bit of offal, and something you don't ask about. The smell is enthusiastic. You plant the trap in the shallows, humming as you do. The rhythm helps. Oddly, your hands don't shake as much, and the mud seems less judgmental. Around you, other villagers are doing the same wading in, placing leaps, singing softly into the reeds. The songs vary. Some are wordless, just low pulses of melody. Others sound like lullabies sung to a creature too old to be soothed. One man's song includes lyrics about a river bride with silver hair and a mouthful of moss. Nobody corrects him. Historians still argue whether singing was meant to calm the eels or simply to pass the time. But in this fog-bound dawn, it feels more like a negotiation, like the humans are trying to ask the river for its gifts, rather than take them. You squelch forward and meet a woman using an eel fork, 3 long prongs, barbed like a trident, designed to stab into the soft silt where eels hide. She jabs downward, waits, then lifts slowly. Nothing. Again, nothing. It's not about force, she says. They feel your hurry. You nod solemnly, as if you haven't just panicked over a particularly aggressive reed. Further downstream, 2 children are testing out a line of eel hooks. Tiny bone harpoons strung along a twine line and baited with earthworms. One of them hums while threading a worm. The other whispers a promise. Just one today. I swear, you can keep the rest. You wonder if the eels ever hold them to it. You walk upstream, brushing dew from your sleeves, and spot an older man repairing his eel weir. It stretches across a narrow section of river, like a half-submerged fence, its woven walls guiding fish into small traps called cribs. He works slowly, pressing reeds into place with practiced fingers. He doesn't sing, but every few minutes, he whistles a low 3-note phrase, like a signal or a habit he forgot to forget. He glances at you and nods toward the current. They move at night, he says, but they listen in the morning. You look down into the water. Something flickers beneath the surface, long and dark, like a ribbon of shadow. Then it's gone. You try humming again. The sound barely makes it past your throat, but the water shifts slightly, and you imagine just for a second that something out there hears you. Or maybe it just doesn't mind you. Either way, you pull your cloak tighter and keep walking, the damp squelch of your boots, keeping time with your song. The traps are set. The tunes have been sung. Now, all you can do is wait. The sun doesn't so much rise as it just sort of glows behind the clouds, like someone lit a candle behind a wool blanket. You stretch your back, trying to coax warmth into your joints, and watch as the fishermen begin pulling their traps from the river. It's not a frenzy. No cheering, no splashing, just a slow, meditative process. Lift the leap. Let the water drain. Peek inside. Sometimes, nothing. Sometimes, something. A young girl tips a basket sideways and out slides a writhing, glistening knot of eels, all muscle and shine, like sentient ribbons. She grins and hums a little tune under her breath. 3 notes, then a pause, then 3 again. Nearby, another trap yields a single silver eel, curled in on itself like it had dreams of being a bracelet. The boy who catches it nods solemnly, then whispers something you can't quite hear before slipping it into a water-filled pail. The morning unfolds like this, basket by basket, song by song. Historians still argue whether the singing had any measurable effect on catch size. No peer-reviewed studies exist on the musical preferences of medieval eels, but what's undeniable is the feeling in the air. The river seems calmer when they sing. The Fishers. 2. You crouch beside a man gutting eels on a flat stone. His knife moves with bored efficiency. You expect him to hum like the others, but he speaks instead quietly, as if narrating a story just for himself. You sing to the river to remind it you're listening, he says, and you sing to the eels so they forget to run. You don't know if he means it literally, or if this is just the kind of wisdom riverside philosophers mutter after a good catch. Either way, it sticks with you. At the edge of the weir, a woman lines up her morning haul. 13 eels, laid end to end like an alphabet you don't quite know how to read. She sings a slow, repetitive verse while she works. Nothing fancy, just the same line over and over. Slippery silver, Twist and turn. In the mud, your secrets churn. You hum along without realizing it. A few meters away, someone starts sorting the catch small eels for the stew pot, large ones for the Lord's kitchen, and a few that no one wants to touch. The ones that are too long, too scarred, too aware. Those get tossed back. You wander toward a hut with smoke trailing from its crooked chimney. Inside, eels are already sizzling in a pan, their smell sharp and oily, cutting through the damp morning air. A woman ladles out a thin broth, beside them oats, onions, and a spoonful of eel fat. She offers you a taste. It's better than it sounds. She points toward the shore and says, "Don't forget to thank them." You turn. The river's still moving, slow and brown, rippling around the weirs like it's learned to be patient. You kneel beside the water, cupping some in your hand, and splash it gently back toward the current. It seems only polite. Behind you, the village begins to hum again, not in song, but in motion. Nets are being mended, boots are scraped. Children gather around a man who claims to have seen a golden eel once, though his description sounds suspiciously like a very dirty stick. You smile. Eels are currency here, not metaphorically, literally. Some are being bundled and sent off as tax. Others are marked for trade. You see a parchment pinned to the side of a barn. 10 eels owed by Martin of the Hill by Thursday. Underneath, someone's written, or one very big one. You begin to understand this isn't just a strange local obsession, it's a lifestyle, a system, a song sung to keep time and to keep memory. You walk back to the tree line, your boots heavy with wet silt, your fingers still smelling faintly of river, and in your head, the song continues. You wander back into the village proper now, where the thatched rooftops sag slightly under the weight of mist, and chimneys puff smoke like the world is quietly exhaling. The smell of breakfast, such as it is, drifts on the wind. Boiled grain, stewed eel, a hopeful pinch of dried thyme. You pass a man paying his landlord in a basket of freshly caught eels. No silver, no coins, just eels still twitching slightly, packed in straw. The landlord accepts it with a grunt, tips the basket sideways, and counts each slippery payment aloud. It's not just bartering, it's rent. Historians still argue whether eel rent was a hyper-local practice or a widespread phenomenon across England. But in some counties, it's said thousands of eels were owed annually by serfs to their lords. They were catalogued, taxed, audited, and every now and then eaten ceremoniously by people with oil-stained fingers and no particular interest in cutlery. You turn a corner and find a small wooden chapel. Even here, even under a carved image of St. Peter, someone has hung an eel skin like a ribbon. You're not sure if it's for luck, gratitude, or just a place to dry the thing. Nearby, two boys argue over how many eels it takes to buy a chicken. One says 12, the other insists on 15 nyan, but only if they're fat. The chicken, for its part, appears unbothered. You follow a cart trundling through the village square. It's loaded with barrels packed tight with salted eels. The cart driver hums as he rides something low and rhythmic. You recognize the tune. It's the same song the fishermen sang at dawn. That's the thing with these songs, they travel. They're passed down like recipes, hummed while sharpening knives, whispered while counting out eel quotas for the winter ties. Everyone seems to know them, even the babies bouncing on hips, babbling something vaguely musical as their mothers stir pots. A woman selling eel pies by the edge of the path offers you one. You hesitate, but take it. The crust is thick, the filling rich, the flavor somewhere between smoked fish and, surprisingly, sage. She grins and says, "Best way to pay a debt and fill a belly." You ask her how long the song's been around. She shrugs. "My mum sang it. Her mum sang it. The river taught us the rest." Further on, you visit a small mill house where eels are being smoked over alderwood. The smoke clings to your clothes. Two old men sit near the fire, arguing about whether eel numbers are lower this year or if the young folk are just lazy with their nets. One suggests the moon isn't right. The other blames witches. You quietly note both. The fire pops. One man starts to hum the morning song again, and the other joins in, off-key and unapologetic. It's the same tune you heard by the river, the same one laced into the rhythm of baskets and gutting knives and whetstones. And maybe that's what the eel songs really are, rituals. Not just to coax the river, but to stitch the community together. You wander toward the edge of town, where a young woman is carefully packing eels into clay jars for delivery. She sings softly, under her breath. In the mud, they twist and glide, silver tongues beneath the tide. Trade them fair and sing them true. Let the river sing to you. You pause. She doesn't stop singing, but she does glance up. They like it when you hum, she says, and with that, she corks the jar, wipes her hands, and whistles to her dog, who doesn't even look up. You sit down beside a mossy stump and eat the rest of your eel pie, the crust flakes onto your lap. The air tastes like brine and smoke and history. And somewhere, down in the current, you swear something hums back. You wake before dawn again, fog clinging to your sleeves, breath puffing out like soft steam, and follow the quiet call of the river. But today, you're not here for the humans. You're here for the eels. You crouch at the edge of the shallows, just beside a narrow eel trap, and peer into the cold water. It's still, almost glassy. And then there, a flicker, a ribbon of movement. One eel, then two, then a whole twisting tangle sliding against the current like a single living sentence. These aren't just fish. These are travelers. Historians still puzzle over how much medieval folk understood about the eel's life cycle. Even now, it's one of nature's more slippery secrets. What's known or suspected is that these European eels are born far away, very far, thousands of miles away, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, in a warm pocket of mystery called the Sargasso Sea, a place no medieval fisherman had ever heard of. And even now, a place most people wouldn't believe is the birthplace of their supper. Tiny, leaf-shaped larval eels, leptocephali, drift eastward for months, sometimes years, carried by ocean currents. And when they reach the European coast, they shift form, becoming glass eels, tiny, clear, almost ghost-like slivers that sneak up rivers under cover of fog and moonlight. You imagine one, no longer than your finger, slipping up through the Thames, through ditches, streams, village wells, into traps built by people who have no idea this thing just crossed an ocean. One boy once swore an eel whispered to him in Latin. His father told him to drink less well water. But even without the language, the movement is there, always upstream, always toward fresh water, always toward something. And you wonder, how did the villagers figure any of this out? They didn't have microscopes, no satellite tracking, no GPS blips tracing eel-shaped arcs across the Atlantic. They just watched and waited. And maybe, somewhere along the way, they began to hum. You sit beside a wide wooden basin now, where a few young glass eels glint in the morning light. A girl gently lifts one and places it in a smaller clay bowl filled with clean stream water. They're travelers, she says softly. You have to be nice to them. And she hums, just a little, a slow, winding tune that matches the eel's curl in her palm. Then she lets it go. Back into the stream, back into the nets. Or, if it's lucky, back towards some reedy, forgotten place where no one's waiting but the moon. Some medieval texts mention eel boys' apprentices assigned the task of watching migration patterns, collecting eelgrass, tending traps. Their job wasn't just to catch, but to notice, to feel the rhythms of the river and record it in songs and rituals and gut memories passed down at the hearth. Historians still debate whether these eel boys existed as formal roles or folk invention, but their legacy shows up in lullabies, in carvings on old weir posts, in notes scribbled in the margins of church records that shouldn't mention eels, but do. You lean back, listening to the creek babble beside you. There's something beautiful about how far these creatures come, only to end up in a wooden bowl, in a stone house, in the hands of someone who still sings to them before the harvest. You hum again, not to summon, not to soothe, just to honor. Somewhere under the water, a tiny silver body turns, just slightly, as if it hears you. You arrive at the monastery as the bells begin to chime, a slow, echoing toll that seems to stretch across the morning fog like an invitation and a warning. The stone walls of the abbey are slick with moss. The garden smells of leeks, ash, and a kind of quiet you can't buy in town. But even here, in this sacred space of scripture and silence, someone's cooking eels. You follow the scent around the cloister, past a novice raking wet leaves, to a low building with smoke curling from its vent. Inside, a monk in a stained habit tends to a pot. He doesn't greet you, he just stirs, then lifts the lid with theatrical flair. Steam billows. Friday stew, he says. You peek inside. It's eels, lots of eels, chopped, stewed, lightly seasoned with onions, garlic, and what you think might be patience. They shimmer faintly in the light, their skin curling as if even in death. They're not quite done wriggling. You've stumbled into a little-known truth. Monks loved eels, especially during fasts. See, in medieval Christian tradition, certain days, Fridays, Lent, Advent required abstaining from meat. But, and here's the trick, fish didn't count, and eels, officially classified as fish, loophole achieved, so monasteries leaned in hard. They built eel ponds, tended traps, and even recorded eel production in meticulous ledgers. One particularly enthusiastic abbot was rumored to bless each catch personally. Another had his own eel poem, though it mostly rhymed grace with face and eel with meal in very creative ways. Historians still debate whether monasteries bred eels intentionally or merely stockpiled them seasonally, but fragments of records suggest large estates sometimes paid other manners in barrels of salted eel. It was currency cloaked in piety. You sit in the kitchen while the monk slices barley bread with a knife so old it could qualify as a relic. He offers you a slice, then ladles out a scoop of the stew into a wooden bowl. You accept it. It's surprisingly good. Salty, soft, a little peppery, somewhere between fish soup and mud memory. You sing while you stir. You ask. He nods. We all do. And there it is again, that low, rhythmic hum. Half prayer, half lullaby. Not loud, not proud, just a presence in the room, like incense for the ears. Later, in the abbey's scriptorium, you find an illustrated manuscript tucked between sermons and tax records. It's small, its corners worn from too much reverent flipping. On one page, a drawing, a bearded monk holding an eel like a scroll. On the next, a hymn. In the dusk, they come to feed. Holy gifts from river reed. Bend the line and bow the head. God provides the slick and bread. You whisper the lines once under your breath, and something in the floorboards creaks approvingly. You leave the monastery with a full stomach, a borrowed hymn, and the distinct sense that if a bishop walked by right now, he'd smell like eel oil. Outside, a pair of novices tend to an eel trap beside a narrow stream. They don't speak, just hum. The same three-note phrase you heard in the village, the same song. Passed through robes and riverbanks, you cross the chapel yard and sit under a tree near the gate. You realize the monks weren't cheating the fast. They were singing thanks for it. And the eels, slippery saints in their own right, were part of the liturgy. You head back toward the village now, but take the long way through the marshy lowlands where the river slows to a crawl, and everything smells like wet straw and secrets. Here, things feel older, less touched. The kind of place where superstitions don't just survive, they take root and throw parties. You pass a wooden post etched with markings. At first, you think they're tally marks, but then you notice the little carvings beside them. Eel tails, fish hooks, spirals, moons, a code, maybe, or a prayer. You crouch beside it. A scrap of linen is tied around the base. Someone left a sprig of sage, and someone else, a much smaller someone, left a smooth stone painted with what looks like a tiny eel face. Cute, but unsettling. You press onward through the reeds, where the path disappears completely, and you find yourself at the edge of a narrow creek that smells like history and regret. A boy is fishing there. Sort of. He's not holding a rod, just a length of twine with a bent pin on one end and what looks like bacon rind on the other. Eel'll bite anything, he says, if you sing. And sure enough, he's humming. A slow, rhythmic tune, low as the fog. You recognize the cadence. It's a variant of the village song, but this one's darker, slower, like it learned to echo inside caves. He pulls the line gently, a flicker in the water, a tug, then nothing. He grins anyway. It hears me, just doesn't want to come up yet. You sit on a log nearby, watching. After a while, a girl joins you. She carries a small wooden box filled with bones, fish bones, eel skulls, other things you decide not to ask about. She opens it and lays them out on a flat stone in an odd, curving pattern. Then she hums. You can't tell if it's a ritual, a game, Or both. They tell the future, she says. Do they? You ask. Sometimes, she replies, especially when they're clean. You don't push for more. Historians still argue whether the eel folk superstitions were pagan holdovers, local folklore, or simply the result of spending too much time in cold water with nothing but eels for company. But whatever their origin, they're everywhere out here. You walk farther along the bog edge and come across another marker. This one a forked stick jammed into the mud, draped in a strip of eel skin tied like a ribbon, a charm, a warning, or maybe just eel-based decor. At the base, a piece of charcoal has been used to write a phrase. Speak low. They rise at dusk. You stand for a moment in the squelching quiet. No birdsong, no breeze, just the constant, sloshing murmur of water moving where it wants. You hum the river tune, a quiet version, just for yourself. And you swear just for a second the surface of the water tightens, like something is listening. You turn back toward the path. The boy is gone. So is the girl. Only the bones remain now rearranged into a spiral that wasn't there before. You don't ask questions. Instead, you make your way back to the village, the tune still in your throat, your boots heavier than when you left. And in the distance, the river hums back. You find your way back into the village, just as the sun emerges or tries to. It's more of a polite suggestion of light than a full commitment, filtered through cloud and smoke and river fog. The kind of light that doesn't dry anything, but reminds you that drying is, at least, theoretically possible. You're headed toward a particular spot today, down by the old bridge where the more inventive eel catchers have set up. These aren't your average leap basket and eel weir folk. These are the tinkerers, the quiet obsessives, the trap artists. One man greets you with a nod as he unrolls a net that looks like it was designed by someone who once wrestled a squid and lost. It's got tiny bells tied along the top, little carved wooden fish heads on the corners, and unexplainably what appears to be a pewter spoon dangling from the center. You ask what the spoon is for. Confusion. He says, as if this makes perfect sense. His son stands nearby, hammering thin reeds into a fence-like frame that will be lowered into the river's edge. They smear pig fat on the tips. It's a choice. You help set one into the water. As it settles, the bells tinkle softly. He begins to sing not a melody this time, but a chant. Slow syllables repeated in patterns. Eel here, eel near, eel now, eel clear. You join in. Why not? Further upstream, you meet a woman who's created her own hook system. Tiny bone spines tied to horsehair, each baited with lard and moss. She swears by it, says the moss gives the bait a homey smell. Eels don't just want food, she says. They want comfort. You're not sure what to say to that. So you nod and watch as she sets each line with the same gentle precision you might use folding a favorite shirt. Historians still argue whether medieval eel gear evolved from trial and error, or from older, regional traditions lost to time. But here, innovation happens in mud-soaked boots. With hands that know what eel teeth feel like and aren't afraid of getting bitten again, you stop by the edge of the river and spot another kind of trap, one that looks almost decorative. A circular frame woven from birch twigs, patterned like a basket, with a single tiny entrance hole. It's beautiful, unassuming, deadly. If you're an eel, a child explains, they go in and don't come out. Like a riddle, you ask if it works. Sometimes, he says, then shrugs. Depends if you sing. You hum a note. He joins you. Together, you place the trap and step back. It sinks slowly, bubbles popping on the surface like the river is sighing. You sit nearby on a rock still slick from last night's rain. The village behind you hums with motion, repairs to weirs, empty traps drying in the sun. Someone knocking on a door to collect 5 eels owed for borrowed firewood. An old man walks past, carrying a coil of eel skin rope. He nods, then says, "We sing to them because it's polite." You ask, "Polite? They come from far off. It's manners." And maybe he's right. Maybe all these strange tools and weirder songs and midnight fat-smearing rituals aren't just for catching. Maybe they're a way of saying, we know you've traveled. You're welcome here. You're wanted. Please don't slither away just yet. You lean back on your elbows, looking at the river. The traps are set. The moss is fragrant. The bells are quiet. And the songs, always the songs, keep winding through the mist. You wake in the middle of the night to the sound of a song, not the usual morning hum. This one is thinner, slower, threadbare, like something meant only for the dark. You follow it, down past the sleeping homes, their thatch roofs hunched like tired shoulders, past the paddock where a donkey stares into nothing, blinking very slowly, past the still warm ashes of a fire someone forgot to thank. And then you see her, the eel wife. That's not her real name. Of course. She has one, but no one uses it. She's old in the way rivers are old. Not aged. Exactly just settled. Her hair's in long gray plaits. Her shawl smells like damp herbs. And she's standing knee-deep in the river, hands outstretched, eyes closed. She's singing to the weir. Not at it, to it. Like it's a friend, or a lover, or both. The melody is slow. 5 notes, repeating, with small catches in her voice that sound like memory. The water glows faintly around her legs, not with magic, just the way moonlight folds into current when no one's looking too closely. You don't move. She's placed little objects along the bank. A dried eel skull, a coin with no face, a strip of moss twisted into a braid. Offerings. Maybe just a reminder that she was here. You sit on a stump and listen. The air is thick with mist. The weir creaks as the water flows around it, the current pausing slightly at the trap gates, curious, respectful. You hear a soft splash, then another. She hums lower now. Slip and twist. And silver turn. Weep not now. The moon will learn. 1 for hunger. 2 for grace, 3 for those who know this place. She reaches into the water, pulls something long and slick from the trap, cradles it briefly, then lets it go. Not all eels are meant to be caught. You inch closer. She doesn't look at you, but speaks. Sometimes they bring messages. She says, "You don't ask what kind. You're not sure you want to know?" She continues. Sometimes they just come to listen, like the river does. Historians still debate whether women played formal roles in medieval eel economies, or whether these eel wives were spiritual outliers. Local mystics, herbalists, midwives with a side hobby in river songs. Some sources refer to eel charmers, others mention river mothers. A few simply say, she knew when the tide changed. Before it did, you ask her what the song means. She smiles without teeth. It means the river is awake. Then she lifts a small clay dish from the water inside. A single eel curls, alive and silent. She whispers to it, then lowers it again. You walk back to the village in silence. The dawn is still hours off. The sky above the treetops holds just the faintest hint of ink blue softening to gray. You sit on your step and listen. A single note lingers in your chest. You hum it, slowly, and down by the river. Something hums back. By now, you've stopped being surprised by where eels show up. You've seen them in baskets, in prayers, in song. You've watched children trade them like coins and monks stew them like scripture. But today, you find them somewhere even stranger, in stories. You duck into a house on the edge of the village, pulled in by the scent of onions and damp wood and something faintly burnt that might be eel or might be furniture. Inside, a grandmother stirs a pot with one hand and gestures at a child with the other. "Tell them," she says. "Tell them what the eel said." The boy puffs his chest, stands tall, and begins. "So there was an eel," he declares, with a silver crown and a tail that could tie knots. It lived in the mud under the bridge and only came out during thunderstorms to give advice. You sit down on a low stool. No one questions the logic. "The eel," he says, "taught a farmer how to predict floods, taught a baker how to flavor bread with river herbs. Once, it even helped a girl find her missing goat, though the goat later ran away again. Probably because it wasn't her goat." You laugh. No one else does. Because here, the line between joke and truth is a little slippery. You flip through a battered prayer book nearby. Along the margins, someone has drawn tiny eel shapes between the psalms. One is wearing a crown. Another has legs, but no explanation. You point it out. The grandmother grins. "That's Eel Jesus," she says, and then goes back to her stew like this is perfectly normal. You walk into the village square and pass a traveling bard setting up a puppet show. His stage is small, draped in blue cloth meant to look like water. His main character is, of course, an eel with a heroic cape and a tiny wooden sword. "It sings before battle," he says. You ask what kind of battle. He shrugs. "Mostly with cats." A group of girls nearby braid eel skins into hairbands. "Keeps the lice away," one claims, or invites them. Depends on the season. You continue wandering and stumble into a tiny shrine at the base of a tree. It's not official. It's not even sheltered. Just a few smooth stones, some dried moss, and a wooden carving of an eel curled around a tiny bowl. Inside the bowl, breadcrumbs, and something glittering. You don't ask. Historians still argue whether the eel's presence in medieval storytelling was a reflection of superstition, scarcity, or simply the human need to mythologize whatever was closest to hand. But whether sacred, symbolic, or simply overfished, the eel became a stand-in for everything. Trickster, guide, punishment, luck. You find a child's song chalked onto the side of a barn. Eel in the river, eel in the floor, eel at the table, eel at the door. Sing it once, and you'll be fed. Sing it twice and dream of dread. You hum the tune automatically. A chicken flaps away in response. Even the animals have opinions on eel folklore. At the edge of the village, you come across a man carefully inscribing something into a piece of wood. It's an eel, but abstract, spiraled, stylized, eyes like stars. He doesn't say hello, just nods toward the carving and says, "This one keeps the storms away." You ask if it works. "Usually," he says. Then he starts humming, and without meaning to, you do too, because by now, the tune has settled in your bones. It's in the food. It's in the prayers. It's in the stories children whisper under blankets when the river winds are too loud and the reeds look like fingers. The eel isn't just part of the landscape. It is the landscape. You don't expect chaos in a place this damp. But here it is, barefoot messengers sprinting across the square, a barrel knocked clean over, and someone yelling about eel theft, which you honestly didn't realize was a crime punishable by shame, song, and possibly exile from the best stew rotation. You catch snippets. Gone from the salt shed must have been Northbridge lads. They even took the big ones. And sure enough, a group has gathered near the smokehouse, where a row of empty hooks swings gently in the breeze. The space that once held glistening, smoked eels now just holds questions. And a very angry woman with flour on her elbows. They climbed the fence, she says, pointing at a faint set of boot prints in the mud. Took at least 3 dozen. No gods, no decency. You nod solemnly. Theft is theft. But in this world, eel theft is a scandal. See, it's 1325. There's been a drought. And while your boots are still squelching in puddles, the river's been unusually low for weeks. The eels, less generous, more elusive, more strategic. The traps aren't yielding. The weirs echo with emptiness. A man sings to the water for 4 hours and catches nothing but an irritated frog. Historians still argue whether the eel shortage of the early 14th century was drought-induced, migration-related, or simply exaggerated by the communities who depended on them. But the panic was real. Villages fought over rights to eel-rich tributaries. Tithes went unpaid. One manor threatened to send eel debt collectors, which, by all accounts, were just 3 angry uncles with baskets and sticks. You walk past a shop with a new sign, "No eel, no trade." Inside, a man is selling eel substitutes, smoked beetroot, thin-cut mushrooms, heavily salted leeks shaped into tiny curls. It's earnest, but not fooling anyone. In a courtyard, 2 women argue over who deserves the last eel of the morning catch. One insists it was promised. The other claims divine right due to her birthday. You pass by quickly. At the edge of the village, someone's carved a warning into a plank of driftwood and nailed it to a fence post. No song for thieves. No stew for ghosts. You wonder if it's a curse. The eel wife stands by the river, arms crossed, unimpressed. "They didn't even thank the river," she mutters. You hum the song just under your breath and toss a small pebble into the water. An offering, or a placeholder. And then something strange happens. Not a miracle, just a flicker, a glint in the water, a twist of motion. A single eel, longer than your arm, slipping along the bank like it's scouting. It pauses, turns, and vanishes again. You glance at the eel wife. She raises an eyebrow. Well, you take the cue. You sing, softly, tentatively, a call, a comfort, a confession. Others join in. Slowly, around the square, the anger gives way to rhythm. The baker sings. The fishmonger hums. Even the children, still holding sticks, like they might go to war with Northbridge. Lower them and murmur a verse or two, because the song doesn't just coax the eels, it soothes the humans, and by nightfall, someone returns 3 of the stolen eels, tied with string. Still cold? No note. Just a line scrawled in mud on the smokehouse wall. Didn't sing right. They wriggled away. You hum a final tune before sleep, and imagine the river smiling. The moon is high tonight, silver, swollen, casting shadows long enough to trip over if you're not paying attention. But you are. You're paying attention because something about this night feels different. You sit by the river, boots off, toes sinking into the damp soil. The water is unusually still. No wind, no frogs, just the quiet hiss of your own breath and a lingering smell of wood smoke from someone's neglected hearth. And then you ask yourself the question no one really wants to say aloud. Do eels dream? You picture them curled in the silt, hearts slow, minds, if they have them, drifting somewhere between instinct and memory. What would an eel dream of? Mud, probably. Pressure, the pull of tides, the strange sweetness of pig blood-soaked bread. Or maybe they dream in light. You stare into the river and try to match its stillness. The surface mirrors the moon, but you know what's under there. 1,000 secrets, 1,000 travelers. Historians still argue whether medieval fishers noticed eel migration patterns consciously or simply through anecdotal wisdom, those folk rhythms where knowledge comes from observation and repetition more than measurement. But even without charts or science, they knew something. They knew eels disappeared. Every so often, always around the darkening edge of the year, the eels would go. The villagers would wake to empty traps, silent weirs, baskets full of nothing but mud and apology. No goodbyes, no farewells, just gone. No one knew where. No one knows where. Even now, not entirely. We say the Sargasso Sea because we have satellite tags and marine biologists and very expensive beeping devices. But back then, they said the eels followed the moon. You sit beside a boy tonight who insists he saw it happen. They left on the harvest moon, he whispers. All of them, one after another. A ribbon in the current, headed for the stars. You don't laugh. Not here. He continues, my brother says they go to find their mothers, but I think they go to be born again. You don't ask what he means. He's already asleep. You hum a song to the moon just in case the eels are listening from wherever they are now. It's softer than the river songs, less of a summons, more of a memory. Silvertail and Riverlight, gone to swim beyond the night. Don't forget our muddy shore. Come again and wriggle more. You sit with the silence afterward. Let it echo. In the village, the smokehouses are empty. The hooks hang bare. Even the eel substitutes are running thin. People still sing, though quietly, as if the eels might hear them from halfway across the world and change their minds. One woman ties eelskin braids to her doorframe to coax the run back early. Another pours a few drops of oil into the water as tribute. An elder lights a lantern by the trap gate, just in case one eel decides to come home first. And you wait, because tonight isn't about catching. It's about remembering that they leave, and that sometimes they return. You're up before the sun this time, not because someone called you, but because the river did. It hums in your bones now, like a song half remembered from a dream. You follow it, down past the frost-dusted fields, past the cold footprints of geese, past a small wooden sign painted hastily with the word tolls. You stop. Tolls? You didn't know there were tolls for eels. But here, tucked between 2 leaning trees beside a narrow stretch of river, is a man in a wool cap far too large for his head, sitting on an overturned bucket, holding a small notebook and a spoon. Name, he asks. You give it. Number of eels carried today. None. You say. He peers at you. You're early. Then, and just like that, you've met one of the eel toll keepers. Historians still debate whether this was an actual profession or a highly specific excuse for sitting by the river all day. But medieval records mention eel counters, eel auditors, and eel toll stations, often little more than huts or checkpoints where someone took stock of what passed through, especially when eels were used as tax or trade. The tollkeeper waves someone else through a boy with a cart holding 3 barrels and a sheepish look. No song today. The tollkeeper calls out. The boy sighs, then hums a wobbly line. The tollkeeper nods. That'll do. You sit beside him. He offers you the spoon. You decline. He opens his notebook. The entries are written in a kind of shorthand you can't quite decipher curly symbols, eel shapes, moon phases, what might be numbers or just very anxious worms. One column is titled Slippery, the other Very Slippery. He flips to a blank page and begins writing the weather, the number of carts so far, and the smell of the river that morning. Good days, he says, smell like rosemary. Bad ones like fear. You ask why he bothers tracking all this. To remember what the river doesn't, he says, and to know when to warn the next eel. You don't press. You just watch as he stamps one cart with a wax seal shaped like a tiny fish. Where he got that is anyone's guess. A little girl skips by carrying two eels in a basket and a feather in her hair. She stops in front of the toll keeper, hums a very confident version of the river song, and offers one eel as payment. He nods, takes it, and bites it like it's an apple. You stare. It's pickled, he says with a wink. I'm not a savage. A dog barks in the distance. Someone drops a bucket. The toll continues, cart after cart. Eels counted, songs hummed, notations scribbled in symbols no one but the river seems to understand. You ask if anyone's ever refused to pay. Once, he says, the eels didn't like it. What happened? He doesn't answer. Instead, he hums, low and steady. You join him, and the ledger grows by one more line. The first frost finally bites. You feel it before you see it, how the air grabs your nose, how your breath curls faster, how even the mud seems to stiffen underfoot like it's thinking about retiring for the season. The river is slower now, not frozen, not yet, but sluggish, thoughtful. And on its surface, a thin lace of ice forms overnight, then cracks under the weight of morning. You make your way down to the shore, where the last of the eel catchers gather with boots wrapped in extra cloth and songs clutched like blankets. No traps today, no gutting knives, no smokehouse fire. Just goodbye. They call it the last song. You see the eel wife first, bundled in layers that make her twice her size. She hums under her breath, not the usual river song, but a closing one. A winding down lullaby. You recognize it by its rhythm, less of a summons, more of a thank you. Others gather near the water's edge, old men with worn nets looped around their shoulders, children with frozen fingertips peeking from woolen gloves. Someone has brought a small drum, another, a single, low flute, no melody, just breath through reed, cold air and memory. You sit beside a man tying a short piece of rope, a bit of eel skin, coiled 3 times. A charm, he says, to keep the memory slippery. You nod, because this is it. The season is closing, the river is resting, and the eels. Those wanderers, those slippery saints have already left. The villagers don't mourn it. Not exactly. They've done this before. They will again, but they sing, because that's what you do when something disappears into the dark with the promise never guaranteed of return. The last song begins, a deep hum, like boots dragging through silt. Then the lyrics, half prayer, half inventory. We give the traps to silence. We give the songs to wind. We give the skins to winter, and hope they come again. The children hum too, no harmonies, just warmth. The melody swells with breath, not pitch, and the sound floats across the half-frozen water like mist on a mission. A crow calls from a bare tree. A pot of something hot is passed from hand to hand, eel broth, steeped with garlic and something vaguely numbing. You sip it. It tastes like sleep. Historians still debate whether this last song tradition was a localized ritual, a regional memory, or an early medieval invention meant to reinforce seasonal rhythms. But the records note it, songs sung at the river's edge, eels named like saints, charms buried at the foot of traps. You watch as someone gently places the season's final trap empty into the river one last time. It floats, then sinks. No one rushes. They sit. They sing. They remember. The flute plays again, just once, then stops. And slowly, the people rise. A girl tosses a handful of crushed herbs into the river. For dreams, she says. The eel wife hums 3 notes, then walks away without turning back. You remain, your breath visible in the pale light. And in the stillness, you whisper the song again, not because it works, but because you want it to. The ice comes for the river by midwinter, not in one dramatic sweep, but slowly creeping from the edges like cold fingers testing the limits of patience. The weirs sit empty. The leap baskets are stacked by the smokehouse, dusted with frost. Even the toll keeper is gone. his little wax seal tucked away until spring. But the songs remain. You walk the edge of the village, scarf pulled high, boots crunching over patches of stiff ground. The river doesn't speak now. It creaks, a low, groaning sound, as the current shrinks beneath the weight of ice. Still there, still moving, but quiet. And yet, if you listen closely, you can still hear it, the humming. Not from the water, from the homes. A mother rocks her baby, singing the eel song as a lullaby. No fish, no traps, just a slow, sleepy voice guiding tiny eyes toward dreams. In a nearby cottage, an old man tunes a lyre with trembling fingers, strumming out the notes like a prayer for warmer months. And at the far end of the village, the eel wife sits by her hearth, carving shapes into bone, spirals, waves, a tale with no end. You knock. She gestures you in, without words. Inside, the air is thick with warmth and the smell of boiled root vegetables. On her mantle, a row of stones lines the edge, each smooth, each marked. She points to the smallest one. Last spring, she says, the first eel sang to that. You nod, because it feels right. She offers you tea. You accept. And for a while, you sit in the soft hush of her home, while the world outside freezes over, and the river sleeps beneath its thin, white blanket. You ask if she still sings. Always, she replies. They'll be back. They need reminding. Historians still argue whether these winter songs were real traditions or romantic inventions, recorded later by chroniclers with soft spots for folklore. But scrolls do exist, margins full of music notations, eel doodles, notes like sung in frost time before first thaw. The songs had seasons, and winter's version wasn't for catching, it was for remembering. Before you leave, the eel wife gives you a scrap of parchment, folded, stained, wrapped in a ribbon of braided eel skin. You open it later by firelight. Inside, only one line. Some things only return if sung to. You hum as you tuck it into your coat, and the wind, just outside your window, hums back. Now the river is still. The songs have softened into memories, and your breath matches the slow rhythm of winter. The eels are far away now, maybe in warmer waters, maybe in deeper dreams. But here, in this quiet village wrapped in fog and frost, their story lingers. The scent of smoke drifts through the chimney, wrapping around you like a heavy wool blanket. The traps are resting. The baskets sacked high. The water is low and slow and silent, as if it amore too is dozing off beneath the moon. You remember the songs, the soft ones, hummed by hands in the mud. The sharp ones, snapped into rhythm with knives and hooks. The sad ones, sung to empty traps under starless skies. And the warm ones, the songs not meant to summon, but to say, we remember you. So let yourself remember the way the eel glided like ink across silt, the way your boots sank deeper with each step, but never stuck. The way even the cold river seemed to nod along when you hummed. Now you are still. Now you are quiet. Now you are part of the story. The trap is waiting. But there's no rush. The river sleeps, and so can you. No need to call out tonight. They'll return, and when they do, you'll be ready. Good night.